Globalization at the surface is about space and movement. Below the surface, globalization is about power, culture, and how people in their cities face shocks to their existing order. There is no better place to tell the story of Berlin's globalization than Tempelhof Airport, where mobility and modernity intersect. The airport is a century-old piece of physical infrastructure. It has been a witness and an active actor in important events in the history of Berlin and Germany. Over time, it accumulated various layers of symbolism and meaning. For most Berliners, Tempelhof Airport is an institutional infrastructure. It is a monument expressing a particular set of values. Among these values, worlding. Berlin could be called a worldly city as early as the 1920s. In the interwar period, Berlin was the world's Hollywood, a center for cabarets, jazz, and homosexual communities. The Nazis chose to emphasize mobility to brand their capital. They chose to invest heavily in the small airport site of Tempelhof, which had previously been used as a concentration camp. The new airport, with its iconic tower, was an emotional sign of mobility, modernity, and a high capacity to aspire, both for German policymakers and for masses of Nazi supporters. Meant to be praised by nations who attended the 1936 Olympics, Tempelhof was more than a breakthrough infrastructure. The airport portrayed a race issue, putting the racial and technological dominance of the German Übermensch on the international stage.
Der 11. Olympiade neuer Zeitrechnung als eröffnet.
The Nazi agenda was completely discredited and rejected after World War II. Faster than anyone could expect, the Berlin airport became connected with a quite different sentiment. The arguably natural affection of the citizens created itself, with West Berlin's blockade by the Soviets. If not for Tempelhof and its famous airlift, this island of Western values in the Communist Sea would have been destroyed just a few years after its creation. The airlift transformed Germany's busiest airport into a symbol of freedom and international solidarity, and it branded West Berlin as a promised land for the Eastern dissidents fighting for their right to mobility. After German reunification in 1990, neoliberal actors pounced on Berlin. Unlike other Eastern European cities, the legacy of neoliberalism was already present in West Berlin after the Iron Curtain fell. The German Democratic Republic had collapsed, leaving economic actors free to dominate the East and further develop the western half of the city, developing the new Potsdamer Platz, remodeling neighborhoods, and creating spaces for international corporations. According to scholars Nick Theodore and Neil Brenner, neoliberal policies are catalysts and expressions of the creative destruction of economic political space. Tempelhof came under this domain. Under pressure from neoliberal incentives and the decision to create a new airport in the East Berlin suburbs, a decision to close down Tempelhof was made. The last plane took off in 2008. Tempelhof became a public space and cultural center. However, Berliners still struggled with neoliberal forces over the right to this space. In response to the rapid development of unused spaces in the city center, a grassroots movement arose to protect Tempelhof as a space of freedom. Activists referred to Tempelhof romantically, citing its uniqueness as a central public space in Germany and the whole world. The referendum to conserve Tempelhof as a public space passed with 63% of the vote. Democracy held its ground against neoliberal forces. However, the question over who should have the right to this space was far from over. The refugee crisis is forcing Germany and Berlin to interrogate their own culture. The long-established hegemony of German Schuld or guilt has driven a humanitarian agenda, uniting volunteers and policymakers in Berlin. Many of these Berliners had escaped East Germany. Freedom and the right to mobility were pressing issues for them. Tempelhof was now a public space, free to shelter asylum seekers. Furthermore, it had once been a concentration camp. Thus Tempelhof became the imagined space where humanitarians could finally redeem the past sins of German society. But this narrative would be too simple. Tempelhof has become a place where this humanitarian hegemony is being challenged. The refugee camp was met with backlash from the public, who had just 7 years earlier voted to keep Tempelhof as a public space. It also failed to live up to the aspirations of Berlin's humanitarians.
لا سكن منيح، لا معيشة منيحة، ما في أكل، ما في شغل، حتى تعليم اللغة في عالم بتضلها سنة بيجي شخص عادي بتقول له ليه صار لك سنة؟ أنت اللي أذيت حالك، لا جنرال له قيمته يعني. في مصاري، ما في أي وسيلة إنه نقدر نعيش فيها، ما في شيء بيخلينا إنه إحنا نتفائل لبكرة.
Berlin now has to reconcile its conflicting identities once more. Tempelhof as an airport was a symbol of physical mobility. Through history, it accumulated layers of sentiment. Through the story of Tempelhof, we can see in a microscale the interactions of globalization processes within urban space. Tempelhof today is a symbol of cultural mobility, where the integration practices and hegemony of Berlin and the German identity are being challenged. As a global city, Berlin continues to adapt its culture to the changing world.
Flieger brauch ich nicht für Venedig oder Bangkok. Auch Istanbul ist drin, wenn ich mich auf mein Rad hock. Nächte sind wie Tage hier, nur ein bisschen dunkler. Wir lieben die Freiheit, doch spielen im Käfig. Fußball und Ping-Pong, New York ist King. Was ist Berlin? Natürlich King Kong! Egal ob Atze oder Göre, ob Lady oder Gentleman, jedem Topf sein Deckel und Töpfchen auf sein Deckelchen. Ja, das ist Berlin.